Mhm. 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 Paulita, hi.
Hi,
Hi. Now I
how's it
feel
going?
good that you're
I'm
here.
sorry.
Now I feel good that you're here.
Well, you can count on me.
Hence, I feel good. Yeah. All is right in the Western Hemisphere.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been using the what is it? The fitness one. The
Girl.
fitness, a
Uh-huh.
little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll just all kind of slip in here. I can see a few others joining, so that's cool. Hi, Pamela. I can have there. I see you now. Okay. And Lauren, picking it up where we left off, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
I gave my team a lot of hours to edit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, well, generally, uh, in my experience, there are a few people that join live, and some that join live like to interact, and others kind of want to listen, and that apparently a good number of people watch later on the recording. So the whole idea of this is that I have a chance to show off my new shirt. That's the main thing that I wanted to get across today. No, of course not. But uh, just to spend some time comfortably, casually, or informally with, a few of you. I like to get to know you. You might have, some comments or questions, or I don't know, it just feels good. So thank you for taking the time. Because I'm here in Thailand on the other side of the planet, we kind of oscillate the time so that those of you that are in the Western Hemisphere have an easier time. And then I click that over to a different time zone for the folks in Europe. So I think you're basically aware of that. And
Pull the valve. Okay,
okay.
you want a cell phone up there somewhere?
I
Unsecured, I can feel it. This is a standard. Talking about having info unit, I just got here on. How do you do
Garnet,
it?
I don't
do you
know.
know who your host is? Because they just got to mute Mark.
Uh,
Simply
Mark is probably the short for marketing, and I think they just realized that they were not on mute. So I don't know.
There
Anyway,
you go.
Marlon, now known regionally as the Invisible Woman. I can see her sofa, but I don't see Marlon. So, okay, anyway, hi. Let's, I don't know, let's do it whatever we're going to do. Paula, you had begun. Paula, some of you, you've met her before. She's a very dear old friend of mine and a longtime user of the technology. So I'm always doubly, triply pleased to have the chance to spend a bit of time. Paula, go ahead. Let's start
Oh,
off.
I just was saying that I've been even, I'm not like a hardcore workout. I mean, I exercise really regularly and stuff. But I've just been playing with the neuroathletics, that new category,
Mhm.
just for general brain fitness still, and I really like it.
Okay, well, okay. Shall I tell you a secret? It's
Of
not
course.
like an entirely big time secret, but um, the neuroathletics came about because of requests for people that are involved in fitness and athletics and wanted to be more comfortable using the NeuroVIZR and all the different collections. And what I did was I repurposed existing sessions and reformatted them so they were more easily understood and applied with a kind of a concept instead of trying to reconceptualize and apply things from all of the collections in general. So um, that's the secret that, frankly, there are so many sessions in the app. And those sessions are all designed for certain purposes. And some of those purposes will fit into different contexts. So, for example, focus. That's in mind states, and everybody kind of understands why that is. Because I worked in sports medicine in the past, I have a pretty comfortable overview of the concepts of what people need, training and conditioning, pre-performance, post-performance, these kinds of things. So I thought, well, instead of making it conceptually complex, let me reorder what I have from all these different collections and put them in a template that a person interested in athletics and fitness could more easily access and use in an efficient way. So that's the secret. It's to me, it's quite reasonable because the brain is the brain. So neuroathletics, for example, in the brain gym, no, not in the brain optimizers, you've got processors and you've got dehabituators. Those are more inclined towards conventional therapeutic uses. The processors are an advanced form of EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I got that from research where they're saying, instead of just the lateralization, the back and forth thing, why don't we use lights to go back and forth? And there are a few devices out there. And when those lights are going left and right, the lateralization, how about if we put some brainwave signaling there so that it maybe is more effective for the person doing the lateralization? That was the concept in the research paper that I did not write. I follow a lot of research. I said, well, that's great. So I made those in the brain processors. They're EMDR with lateralization, which is conventional. I have two different speeds, a little bit of a tweak. And I said, well, in the research, they said, let's try alpha modulation. So I said, well, good, I can do it. So I made gamma and theta and alpha and beta and so on, and delta. I put them in so that persons using EMDR processes could experiment with them to their advantage. Boom. Then the dehabituators, those come out of what's called multimodal intensive neurofeedback. Multimodal intensive neurofeedback. This is all getting into maybe a little bit of technical, but why neuroathletics sources some of the other collections. So what's multimodal intensive neurofeedback? Well, neurofeedback practitioners, there are many models of neurofeedback. It's not only one, but it's very common to find these bands of fixation, fixated bands, where people are stuck in habituated narrow bands and can't quite get out of it. I'm told, in conventional neurofeedback, experiencing that, it's often typical that it would take between 10 and 30 sessions to get them to shift. It's like, wow, that's just way too much. So in this mode of neurofeedback, they say, leave that machine, let's go to the other side of the room, and I'm going to do this other machine device. And we're going to soften, what I would say, soften the glue of this stuckness, of this habituation, this fixation. And they'll use, say, pulse magnetics, or they'll use microcurrent, or in my case, or in our case, we use light and sound. So if it's stuck in, say, theta, which is really typical of certain forms of ADHD, for example, you come in and you scramble the eggs, you sandblast, you loosen up that theta fixation. So you disconnect them. And in full theory, you disconnect, then you reconnect with something positive, and then you reinforce. Disconnect, reconnect, reinforce. So I put them in there. They work really well. So knowing that in athletics, performance athletics especially, not just fitness and exercise, there are oftentimes persons that find themselves stuck in a certain kind of brainwave state, a certain kind of mindset. So I put them in there. So I borrowed them from brain optimizers and put them in the habit busters for neuroathletics. So that's an example, we have a little long-winded, but an example of how the neuroathletics is, to me, a very highly functional, easy to understand repurposing of the, all that we have so many collections and sessions. I tried to make it easy. Okay, that's that. Vladimir, hi. I don't think have we met? I don't recall. Anyway, high five. And also Heidi, is that how I say? Okay, hi. Okay, and Marlon, welcome. And Pamela, I see that you've got your lawyer with you or your bodyguard or some. Hi, hi. Okay. Anyway, if you want to ask a question or talk or comment or make a suggestion, this is fine. Otherwise, we can just hang and chit chat. Anybody?
So, Garnet, what you were just explaining there with the habit busters,
Yeah.
I was saying to Malcolm. So we're coaches, and part of what we do is like interrupt people's patterns. We interrupt people's
Good.
habits, and so I was thinking the habit busters would be a good thing for our clients, like kind of like we're in a coaching session and we put them on something like that in the middle or beginning of a coaching session. And my understanding, what you just said, like it would kind of interrupt their brain waves and kind of like change maybe their thinking, open them up to different things.
I would say that's an excellent way of explaining it. Yes. And okay, two things. One is I've been working with a gentleman in Australia, a very intelligent and matured EEG specialist. And most recently, we were together and he was exploring this with me and had equipment live. And by the way, the habit busters and or the dehabituators are explained in the personal guide document as well as the neuroathletics. So if you want to download, if you haven't, that free document, the personal guide, there is a section that talks about them and in a very helpful sense gives because most of us don't have neurofeedback devices to see where a person is fixated. However, there is a well-known, reasonably well-accepted group of subjective symptoms that a person would demonstrate that would give you a pretty good hunch as to where they're stuck. Okay, so, refer to that, please. We won't take time now. Anyway, so with this EEG guy in Australia, for a certain reason, we chose the delta dehabituator. A lot of folks with ADD and ADHD are fixated in either delta or theta or both, by the way. So he did that, and we were watching live on his device what was going on in his brainwaves. And with that, and as a consequent, certainly, for a period after, but certainly during it, the session disallowed his brain from going into delta. And that's the whole point, that the focus of a habit buster session or a dehabituator is to target a certain range and confuse it, disallow it, not let it settle into that. So I would say minimally it softens the glue. Whether it actually dehabituates, whether it busts the habit, usually that takes repetition because habits are habits. But we could see live on screen that the process was disallowing his brain from settling into delta, and it was pushing it theta and alpha and so on. So I thought, okay, that's great. For me, as an example, I'm an anomalous. I'm a horrible example of how to use the NeuroVIZR because I do everything with experimentation and creation and weird stuff, and some things normal. But I'm a conservative person in the sense that I don't drink alcohol. I mean, I'll have a beer with a buddy or a glass of wine, but I don't really like alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't like weed. I used to do psychedelics a long time ago. I don't. It's like, sometimes I just need what I would call a shot of tequila. Like, it's like, shit, just give me like a little bump of something. I'm in there working or whatever it is. Actually, I'm pointing what you can't see. I had a birthday a couple months ago and I bought myself this awesome Japanese massage chair. So I have that, by the way. But so for a shot of tequila, I'll usually use the Beta Habit Buster. And it's 5 minutes and it pops me. It's that quick relief. So I don't use it in a patterned process, but I use it in kind of give me a hit of, like I call it a shot of tequila. I tasted tequila once. It's disgusting. I don't know why people drink it. But anyway, so if in your case, going back to you, Pamela, and did you say Anthony? I didn't quite catch the name. Okay. Anyway,
Malcolm.
Malcolm?
Yeah.
That's not even close to Anthony. What did I get that? Well, it's kind of an English name, so maybe, okay. So, I think conceptually what you said makes sense because there is this issue. You can consider it a kind of a brain priming for something. Once you disconnect, because the brain is always hungry for signals, it's hungry all the time, and it wants to have signal and noise. It wants to, predict and make patterns. It wants to know what's going on. If you would do that, my assumption in what little I understand of what you do is that the habit buster softens the glue of this zone, and then you would follow it with, like, you get it hungry, and then you give it raw kale. Normally, you don't like raw kale, but because you're so hungry, you're willing to try it. Oddly, it doesn't taste so bad. So I would think that you would stage it. But remember that the theory of how to do this is in 3 steps. Disconnect, that's the habit buster. Reconnect, meaning that you offer them a positive alternative, and I'm saying that generally. And then with that alternative, then in some way you positively reinforce it. Disconnect, reconnect, reinforce. That's the game. Vladimir, I see your lips moving. I think you're on mute. Hi, what's up? I don't hear you. Check it again, buddy. I don't hear you. No. Okay.
I have a question, if I may, about that.
Sure. Vladimir, get your thing together and we'll come back to you, buddy. Lauren, what's up?
So to follow on that theme then with the habit busters, the unstickiness, and as you said, your book contains a lot, and thanks. Every time I read through the book, which I have been doing multiple times, I get something else from it. Following on what Pamela was talking about in her sessions, sometimes I want to know about timing, and I'm going to tie this into what I read in the booklet about the kind of your trauma program, like at the end of working through and accepting, being present with the feelings, you do like an alpha processor, right? So the question I have is, does it sound practical to, when somebody gets on your table and you start the session, to do like a habit buster to kind of start the shift? You do some of this deep work and then you'd finish with like an alpha processor.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, and I have a couple of comments. The brain processors, the ones built off of EMDR, if you happen to look into the personal guide, you'll see that I explained a multi-step process. Sometimes I feel that I should not have put it in the collections because it's used an awful lot in trauma, certainly used an awful lot in PTSD, and even in major depressive disorder. These can be very real and demanding experience states for people. And I would, I was conflicted. Should I put it in there or not? Because professional, people that have serious mental problems should work with well-trained professionals. I don't want them to be toyed with by, well-intentioned amateurs that don't know how to handle shit when it happens. So I was kind of conflicted. So about those processors, the one with the EMDR, I would say, because there are lots of books out there now about doing it for yourself. So I'd say if a person has a mild to moderate discomfort in these areas, this is reasonable. If it's above moderate, I'll say moderate to serious, please don't work with people. If you're an amateur, if that person is more than moderate in their discord, in their suffering, unless maybe you are trained in it. So I'm not, you know, wanting to roll over, maybe you are trained, but generally speaking, that's why I was kind of ambivalent whether to put them in there or not. So I would say, you know, mm, uh, be
I have,
cautious.
I
Be cautious.
cautious, and I have a follow-up question on that. Yeah,
Okay,
because
I'm
remember,
going to say more, but you go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, because we talked when we had our talk the other day. This is when you made your faces. Remember?
Apparently,
So
I make faces, everybody. He was
yeah,
pointing
so I'll
that out.
give you like kind of real life situation. So in my practice, when I do conscious work,
Yes,
so I'm working with people with their current story, and we regress. We do regression work,
sure,
and they bring up some old stories, little t, call it trauma.
sure.
And the question, so I'm already doing that. The question I have now that I have the NeuroVIZR,
Yeah.
would this be something that would help consolidate or would this aggravate? Because this is a new thing that I'd be adding. I'm already doing this. We do at the end to the positive, and we've made a shift. We've had a mindset shift. I think we're working on a deeper level as well. And I'm looking for something. Oh, this may even cause the more, when we talked about the neuroelasticity and plasticity,
Yeah.
maybe help it mold more. So that's where my question is. Let's assume somebody's already working with these people. We have some training and somebody wants to put this into their practice, and we've already done the heavy lifting where they've had their releases, they've worked through some emotional pain,
Yes.
and now we're finishing the session. So at the beginning, so intuitively, I've experimented with it. I've
Yes.
used the habit buster on a few people at the beginning just to
Very
help
good.
settle them down, just like I use my needles to get them calmer. And then a few people at the end, I've put in the alpha thinking that it would be consolidation. But that's just me intuitively thinking.
Well,
Now I wanted to pick your brain on what do you think of
okay.
that?
I have um, okay. I have a couple of comments or opinions about that. The and I don't know if everybody is aware. In simplicity, the EMDR out of Stanford a long time ago, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing or reprogramming. And it comes out of an observation that the eye movement laterally back and forth. By the way, it also is audio, even tapping. So this kind of thing, but it's most evidently with the eyes. This is the working theory. There are a couple of theories, but the simple one is that the amygdala, which is a part of the brain, kind of the emotional center, is desensitized temporarily by repetitive lateralization. So that means when a person is exposed to actual or reflected triggers that would get the emotions moving, usually negatively, because the amygdala is subdued, the person is able to return to certain thoughts or experiences or whatever and see them more objectively without as much of an emotional response. That's the basic concept of lateralization or EMDR. So that is built into that process. In most cases, it has been found that the EMDR process works best with single trauma incidents, big bad things that happened, and as a consequence, there's a traumatic or PTSD-like condition. It's been observed that people that have cumulative insults and traumas over time, hence resulting in, say, PTSD, that lateralization doesn't work as well. Okay, so that's just a perspective from EMDR, not from NeuroVIZR. Bring it into the NeuroVIZR. So in most cases, this process is one of a gradual unfolding. It's not a quick cure. So it would be expected that there might be evolution forward, meaning like release and recognition, or there could be a temporary aggravation, not really an aggravation, but an intensification is also possible. So that's why I would say, and Lauren, I think you're well suited, but that working with professionals is advised, unless it's a mild, very small T trauma. Okay, boom, boom, boom. The NeuroVIZR concept of what constitutes a session is actually in two parts. We call them brain prime and brain time. Brain prime, brain time. Yeah, it rhymes, it's cute. The brain prime, meaning to prime the brain, is actually the light and sound session in and of itself. So, and I say this to make it a little bit dramatic, that the deep effect, maybe benefit of a NeuroVIZR session begins when the light and sound end. Let's use an analogy. You eat a glorious meal, you enjoy it, we have all these things going on. That's like eating food, a delicious meal. That's the brain prime. That's the light and sound session. When you finish eating, you start digesting. Or in our case, when you finish the priming, the brain time is the integration process. So brain prime, brain time. And that integration process, I encourage minimally that you just sit, keep your eyes closed, feel what you feel, and follow the feeling. The following the feeling means you engage the most potent primal psychoactive agent of all. It's called your attention. That you give your attention to what you're feeling as a consequence of the priming. And that is extremely potent. To go back to Lauren, and recently I don't know if we've released it, I did a process, I call it a NeuroVIZR 7-day meditation experiment. All right, maybe it's not been released yet. It's just, interesting ways to use the device and get to know it. So I've said the session is brain prime followed by brain time. In that, just to complicate things, but not, in it, I said, okay, I'm going to pre-prime. So there's brain prime, brain time. So I thought, let's experiment here and let's do something like to pre-prime the brain. And to Lauren's point, that's when I use the habit buster or the dehabituators. A short 5-minute process, because I kind of have a good idea of where they're stuck. And I tried to soften the glue so that the full session priming might be better accepted. Now, in every collection has a different pattern, like the microdosing has a different signal design than, say, mind states. In the mind states, every single mind state session actually has some pre-priming built into it. So, I'm well aware of these, and I know that they work. Like many, many techniques that should work don't work because there is an assumption that the brain is ready to receive the information. The brain is ready to change. And that's not true. If you're stuck in a certain process and you get some advice, that advice might just bounce, like, as they say, water off a duck's back. Why? Because you're not receptive. So I think in anything that we have, the idea is, you know, how much open-mindedness is there? How much ability does the brain actually have to change as a consequence of this technique? That's why many of us have trouble in meditation, because if we sit for, say, 20 minutes or half an hour, we probably spend 2/3 of that starting meditation. We haven't even started it yet because of busy bee or all the like these, you know, images that we have. So in the NeuroVIZR, you know, I say a brain that can change when change is required, that's a healthy brain. A brain that can change, but, you know, is it ready to change, or do you need to prime that change? Do you need to do something so that they can be more responsive? Anyway, I'm a talker. Heidi, no, hang on, bud, just a bit, because I thought Heidi was trying to, in between her coffee, slip in a comment or a question. May I? We'll pick it up later, Laura.
I can wait with my questions. Not a problem.
No, but I'd rather that you say them. You know,
Okay.
I get little notes here, you know, but the truth is I can hardly read them. I'd rather look at your face. Something pops up in my chat, bibbidi bobbidi boo ba, and then I look again and it's gone. So I'm like a chicken. It's just one act at a time, I guess. Heidi, what's up?
I have two questions.
Sure.
Well, I have lots of questions, but
yeah, me
for now. One is just curiosity. When I close my eyes, I get masses of different colors.
Anytime.
So the colors, is that something that my brain creates? Because I mean, the lights are white. Or would everybody have see exactly the same colors when they close their eyes and they did the same session?
Actually, we just finished, it took us 6 months to do it, a study out of an Eastern European university that can partially answer that, and I'll answer that on my own. So I'll give the answer in two parts. Okay, first of all, the color of the stimulating light, whether it's white or red or whatever, does not create the colors that you see with your eyes closed.
Okay.
It doesn't. So where do they come from? They come from the flickering pulsations. The pulsations is kind of a Morse code, if you can remember what Morse code was. So that when I close my eyes, whether it's white light or red light or blue light, different wavelengths make it through the eyelids with more or less efficiency. In the white light, there are long waves, those are like at the red end, and there are very fast waves, that's at the blue end, with everything in between. The eyelids act as what's called a low-pass filter. Like if you go outside, here it's sunny time in Thailand, if you close your eyes and put your face to the sun, what you see is like a red, orange, a little bit yellow. Why do you see those colors? Well, they're not coming from your visual cortex per se, that the eyelids block the very short waves. The longer waves penetrate more deeply. So through your eyelids, the long waves of red and orange can make it through the tissue quite well, but the short, the you know, the blue, purple, even a bit of the green, and they can't make it through. So long waves penetrate the medium, penetrate the tissue, and shorter waves don't. Okay, so that's a fact. But what you see there is not what you see from the NeuroVIZR or psychedelic mushrooms, or you get a migraine headache or whatever it is, that in our case, the flickering rates, the on and off, are interpreted in the visual cortex in particular ways. I could tell you the physiology, but it's probably boring. So that's the first thing, is what you're seeing is a decoding of vibrations. You're not seeing the color from the external light. That stops. Because, although I wouldn't recommend it, you can do flickering light with your eyes open, and what happens is what's going on in your visual cortex from the flickering superimposes it on what you're seeing with your eyes open. So if you were looking at somebody's face, you would still be seeing their face, but over top of their face, there would be these colors and patterns. Okay, so
That's very, very interesting. Thanks for explaining that.
don't do it with your eyes open. It gives you a headache. But then,
No, I won't.
but then the other, we just finished the study, which is a fascinating study. It's like, one of the aspects was, well, if two people at the same time are experiencing exactly the same NeuroVIZR session, what's happening with their brains? Are their brains behaving in the same way or a different way or starting or changing, or what the hell's going on here? So this is what we found. Generally speaking, two people, same time, same session, have a different response. But there are different elements of the response. One is they tend to see the same colors in the beginning. They tend to see the same patterns in the beginning. Now, this research, for many people that don't realize what pulsing, what flickering rates, whether it's with light or even electricity, have a well-known tendency to create certain colors and certain patterns. It was from 1929, Heinrich Klüver, University of Chicago, experimenting with mescaline and flickering lights, came up with what's called Klüver's form constants, that there are 4 typical visual cortex patterns: checkerboards, spider webs or radials, funnels and tunnels, and spirals. It's well known because of the innate neurology of the brain, the way we have depth perception, all of these things, that these come forward. So when two people are experiencing the same NeuroVIZR session, it's like going to a movie to a comedy. Different people will find it more or less funny, but they're all basically, although some people may have a tragic reaction to it, I don't know. But, there is a neurological generality, and then we have individuality. So, okay, then a different aspect. I've got to be careful because this is leading into like a delicious but a big topic, that brain signal variability. This is BSV. You've heard of heart rate variability. Well, we're moving rather assertively into brain signal variability. This is the cutting edge of neurology right now. Brain signal variability. And there are many types of it. Brain signal variability is influenced by a NeuroVIZR session. And in our case, we had 2 different people, actually as part of a jazz improvisation experiment, which I may or may not get into today. But in one person, the variability went up and up, meaning that they let go of patterns quite a lot to be able to improvise jazz drumming. And the other person, the variability went up and then settled back down. So there is, and for those of you that are interested in, Chinese medicine, I think, Lauren, we might have bumped into this topic, that there is a bidirectional, or what we'll call an adaptogenic response, that, to put it simply with some risk, each person's brain adjusts or responds to the session according to their needs or disposition. So we're not forcing the brain to be a certain way. We're providing a person a form of stimulation that allows their brain to be more adaptively able to be responsive, which is a crazy initial finding. And one of the reasons why it's radically different than conventional brain entrainment. In brain entrainment, you are attempting to impose upon the brain a certain signal set. In conventional brain entrainment, it's just repetitive and periodic. That's the whole point. And in that entrainment, there is a period called superimposition. It's usually around 6 to 8 minutes. So in the beginning, it's like you're tapping the person's foot for them, And then after a period of time, say around about 7 minutes or so, then the brain goes into what's called either acquisition or entrainment. So then the foot is tapping by itself. But whether it's superimposition or acquisition or entrainment, it's the same thing, that session, even though you do a bunch of people, there is an effort or an expectation that they're going to have a similar or same response. Even though the brains are different, you're kind of like coaxing / forcing the brain to be a certain way. We're not doing that with the NeuroVIZR. It's all about delta dynamics, change dynamics. And this recent research has been very encouraging. Okay, Vladimir, you're back. Do you have, is your sound working? Can I hear you? Still don't hear you, buddy. I'm sorry. No. Okay. All right. Next time for sure. Okay. Anybody? I'm trying to like spread the peanut butter over everybody here. So anything else?
Hey,
Lauren.
I'll dive in.
Okay. Hi, Marlon. Please do.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you? So when one is using the brain dehabitu
Mhm.
dehabituators,
Habit
so I
Buster
understand.
is easier. Yeah.
What's that?
Habit Buster is easier, maybe, as a name.
Okay, dehabituate, yeah. Um, so I understand the, loosening the glue in that process.
Yeah.
So when you're wanting to integrate the quote better habit that we
Yeah.
perceive for ourselves,
Sure.
is there a certain time frame in which we should go and do those particular,
Yeah.
let's call them tasks?
Sure. Yes. That's a good question with, I think, a pretty reasonable and simple answer. The whether it's NeuroVIZR or something else that shifts the brain, in this case, the NeuroVIZR, we end up for a period of time in technically a hyperplastic state, meaning the brain is more sensitive to input and more likely to be able to make change. And technically, that's if there's a significant stimulation, and I would say most NeuroVIZR sessions would be significant, it's a 1 to 2 hour period. And that 1 to 2 hour period is really quite potent. Now, of course, that assumes that you're not you, that a person is not doing something counterproductive in that time, that there's a kind of a fluid or a sloping introduction. Now, it could be right away. In this jazz improvisation study, they did it just a few minutes after they did the jazz improvisation, just a few minutes after the NeuroVIZR session. So that was more experimental and controlled. I would say that's why, at the end, when I say that the brain time, the digestion integration time, in that case, it's right after the light and sound ends. So that's momentary. But a period of certainly 1 and maybe 2 hours, depending on the person's, capacity, is a really potent time to introduce the other good stuff you want.
Okay, so to put a practical spin on this, what I had been doing was maybe toward the end of the day when I've taken care of, the things that I perceive that I need to do, it's like, okay, now I have time for the NeuroVIZR. Do
Sure.
a session, and then I'm still in kind of like, okay, I'm going to watch a little streaming video now.
Yeah.
So perhaps what would be better, correct me if I'm not
Mm,
catching what you're saying properly, is to do the session, take my relax and feel time.
yeah.
As I come out of that,
Hmm.
go and do my best to engage in the habit that I'm wanting to substitute for the other habit.
I think that's a fair way to say it. It may not be the only way, but I would agree. That sounds reasonable to me.
So if I just kind of kicked back for the rest of the evening because the day's gone by and I'm
Sure.
kind of tired, it's not going to help as much.
Well, okay, let's make an important point. I'll say in the
Yeah.
simplicity, what would be your goal? If your goal is to be able to let go of shit, to just cruised smooth sailing, then that would not be so bad, because maybe you're obsessively habituated over, some issue, and you want to go back to it and get out your calculator again or something like that. So I would say being aware of what it is that you want to achieve progressively, then you would style the brain time to fit that goal or that intention. Many
Okay.
of us don't know how to consciously, deeply relax. It's one of the most potent states, if you want to call it a state. And few of us, we generally relax by substituting something for something, like Netflix, what I call Methflix.
Yeah.
And, me too. But the issue of, hey, what I'm going to do right now is nothing. I'm going to sit back, either eyes open or closed, and I'm just going to let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. Stay lucid, not zone and not fall asleep. But I would say that's probably, if there's any one thing that most of us need to do in our brain time after the brain prime, it's to stay lucid, stay aware, and let it go, let it go. See how far you can go into that inner space or outer space or whatever space it is. So I would say, to your point, to restate it, clarify what your goal is, what it is, what habit or what activity or state that you would aspire to. And after the NeuroVIZR, assuming the visor session points in that direction, or the habit buster, softens the glue, do who you want to be after that.
So like if I did a focus session, that I would see that maybe being more in the middle of the day, and then I kind of go and actively focus on the stuff that I
Yeah.
feel I want to do. If I'm trying to be calm and more relaxed, then it's kind of just stay in chill mode.
Yeah, basically, yes, something like that. Whether it's creativity or, all the different kinds of spaces and places. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to be? I'm going to use something to point in that direction, and then I'm going to do something to reinforce it. I'm not going to be an idiot right after and do something contrary and think the visor session is magic. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Okay. Very
All right.
good. Thank you.
Okie doke. Well, I've really got an itch to hear Vladimir, but maybe Vlad, if you want to type it, then I've got all these messages I haven't been looking at anyway. Hang on. I've got, okay, off Instagram. Okay. Does the brain learn to create these states? Let get into alpha or gamma more easily. Yeah. Is it a learning process? I'm trying to screw with the screen here, pardon me. I have another way of characterizing brain prime and brain time. I call the brain prime the light and sound. I call that the lesson. And then the brain time, I call that the learning. So this kind of folds over to what Marlon was asking about. So I would say, here's the lesson. Now, here's the learning meaning the integration, that it's something, that there's a kind of a common sense logic to the whole thing, that the more you do something, what call it a habit, call it a learning, call it a practice. So yeah, if that's not too simple an answer, that there is a process of habituation. I see a hand. I assume it's not high five. Pamela, is that you? Would you like something?
Yeah, it's actually Malcolm. I'll let him
Malcolm.
ask his question.
You mean
Yeah.
Tony? Sorry.
Yeah, Anthony. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What I was asking Pamela earlier on, this came to me when I went through to the toilet, was I was like, what would you say out of the whole visor programs, would you say is the best bang for your buck for nervous system regulation? Like, if there was one specific thing that you thought was maybe the best to help with that.
Nervous. Okay. Ask me either again or ask me more, and because I don't want to give a flip answer, I'd like to better understand a little bit what you're asking. Try it again, please. I mean,
Yeah,
from my head, not your head. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, so obviously a lot of people are traumatized or in stress states, and so their
Yes.
nervous system's on high alert all the time. I'm someone
Yeah.
that has been working for 6 years to get my nervous system to a place of calm, and still it's
Yeah.
constantly alert and worrying and things. And so I suppose it's
Mm.
curious as to maybe within the NeuroVIZR model, if there was any ones that you said were the best return on your investment with regards to helping with regulating the nervous system, in addition to the things that I already do, like cold plunge and breath work and things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, habits, whether good or bad, are famously difficult to change. So I would say that the NeuroVIZR as a whole would fit very nicely into a progressive system of changing a neurological set point. So I would say, first of all, doing what you're doing. I mean, I don't do cold plunges anymore. They freak me out. But I get the idea. And easy
We
come,
have been
easy.
doing, sorry, Garnet, we have been doing the microdosing. We've been
Yeah,
doing,
thank
we
you.
did the trauma microdosing, and now we're doing the blockage microdosing. So we do that every
Okay,
day.
okay.
Um,
And I don't want to give an answer just to give you an answer. And let's say this, Pamela, Malcolm, uh, if it seems appropriate, uh, maybe let's talk, not in a group, and also that it would give us a little bit more time to kind of think it through. And in as much as it might be interesting for everybody, right now, um, I do my best to be honest. And in this case, honestly, I would like to better understand so that what I say is more reasonable. Because it's a learning circumstance for me to be able to kind of slowly untie this knot. And if it's, I mean, that's a bad analogy, but something like that. So if that's cool, then
yeah,
we can
love
do.
that.
Okay. Heidi
Yeah,
again.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Yes, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. All right. By the way, I guess I'm getting prompts from my crew because we tried to keep it to an hour respectfully. And just to let you know, it looks like we have, I don't know, 7 minutes left or something. But okay. Heidi.
Chronic pain have you looked into chronic pain and lights?
Well,
Is there, I'm, what I'm looking, what I'm wondering is, I think chronic pain a lot has to do with the brain getting more and more sensitive.
yes.
So there might not be anything wrong with all the pain or the body, but the pain is just. So is it possible to kind of reduce the sensitivity of the brain a tiny little bit to the pain?
Okay.
With lights.
I have a few thoughts about that because before the NeuroVIZR, as some of you know, I was involved in other technologies and methodologies. So I have some generalized perspective. The first thing is that maybe I'm not just playing with words, but there is the sensation of pain, and then there is the emotion of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
suffering is not the same as the pain. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pain can have a very physical cause, and then there can be the relationship to the pain. So when it comes to, I'll say, the relationship to the pain, because the NeuroVIZR, as I have to say, and it's not a medical device, I'm not able, nor would I make medical claims, and pain is in that category. But the emotional or psychological relationship to any challenge, it works feasibly in the domain of the NeuroVIZR because it works with perception and sensation and mind states. So I think that is viable. The other thing actually comes out of another device domain that I worked in quite a lot for a while. Some of you know it, the Interex or the Russian scanner. And I developed, my job in that technology was to change complex Russian methodologies into very simplistic Western methodologies. That was my main job with others. And I came up with an understanding that I call it a brain mishap. Mishap as an acronym, that the brain, and here's the acronym, mistakes incoming sensation habitually as pain. Mishap. The brain mistakes incoming sensation habitually as pain. And and I prove this to be true in the methodologies sometimes. And it's very Pavlovian, if everybody knows, the salivating dog and the ringing bell, that if a particular condition creates pain and that pain is exacerbated with motion, over time, motion and pain are connected, like the ringing of the bell and the salivating dog. Even when the cause of the pain goes away, the brain has been habituated in proprioception. When it feels movement, proprioceptive movement that I feel right now, it will habitually interpret it as pain. So in a case like that, you prove to the brain that you can move without pain. So in a case like that, there's some technical process, but like if you can like ice something so that when you're moving, you just feel cold, and you prove to the brain that, see, I'm moving and I'm only feeling cold. I don't feel pain. I feel cold. It can break that habituation. So the mishap is that the brain mistakes incoming sensation habitually, and that's the key, as pain. And I'm only offering that because of my past experience with it. In the NeuroVIZR, it would be more on shifting the relationship of the suffering aspect of pain without any probable direct influence, because there are many causes of pain. But I mean, I'll give hopefully not a controversial example, but if a lover gives you like a little quick love bite on the neck, you experience that in a certain way. However, if you're out camping in a sleeping bag and you're nervous, and in the nighttime you feel something bite you on the neck, I bet you have a different emotional relationship to that exact same level of pain. So maybe the NeuroVIZR can help in the relationship, but maybe not the pain itself. Okay, we've got like a quick 2 minutes left before they pull my plug. And Vlad, I'm gonna like all day just think, type something through. If you have a question, email me, and I'll do my best to respond at least by that way, or set up something separate than this. So, but I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your effort. I'm sorry I can't hear you, man. Okay.
Garnet, can I get that clarification I wanted on when you were talking about brain prime and brain time?
Yes, sir.
The question I had is, my understanding is the brain prime is the lights in the music, the brain time is when it's off and we're integration. And then you talked about that the mindset already has brain prime built into it. So we don't necessarily have to choose a habituator or a brain gym before that because it's already built in.
Yeah, it's built in, but of course you can increase that target effect. You can increase it. Like, I don't know, nobody goes to movies anymore, but they used to have, or like going to a concert, there's an opening act, then there's the main performer. So
so we could still do a habituator and then a mind state.
Yes, of course. My philosophy is achieve the most while doing the least. So
are brain gyms also considered like where they have endurance, strength? Those are also brain primers.
Yeah, Yes,
Okay.
because every session is built on a combination of 4 things. The coordination, flexibility, endurance, strength, meaning the amount of change, the complexity of the change, the rate of the change, and the intensity of the change. And you use those creatively to create a session. The brain gym takes you, by analogy, you're not on the tennis court, you're in the gym doing isolated exercises so that you can do tennis better. And so the brain gym, like a gym, breaks it down to fundamental aspects.
When I paint, sometimes we do 2 coats of prime. So could we do brain gym, brain dehabituation, and then a mind state, or is that too much to have 2 5-minuters and then the main course?
What do you think?
I think for some people it'd be fine.
Okay, there's your answer.
Right? I think sometimes
Okay.
it's unnecessary. You're wasting paint.
Well, there's also truth in that. Okay. All right. To all of you, please, if you need or want something, Kamala, like the same name that lost the American election, Kamala is my systems manager and my savior. You can contact Kamala, Kamala, at neurovizr.com. Vladimir, please do. Pamela, Tony, joke, Malcolm, please do. And thank you all for spending your time. It's my pleasure to have the time with you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Garnet. Bye.
Adios. Bye-bye.